He had it all: money, fame, and power. The world knew him as the media mogul who built $1 billion empire from scratch. But when his father passed away, everything changed. The will came with one shocking condition: to inherit the fortune, he had to marry a homeless woman, not a girlfriend, not a celebrity, a complete stranger living on the streets, and he only had 7 days to do it. Everyone thought it was a joke. Why would a billionaire, someone with access to anyone and anything, have to do something so absurd? But the will was clear. No marriage, no inheritance. The board was already circling like sharks, ready to tear his company apart. With his back against the wall, he had no choice but to play along. Then came ***, standing alone outside a subway station with nothing but a torn coat and tired eyes. He picked her because she didn't ask for anything. She didn't even recognize who he was. Just a quiet woman with a hard past and no expectations. To him, this was just a business deal. A quick marriage. A few photos. Done, or so he thought. But nothing went as planned. She wasn't like the women he was used to. She didn't care about money, and she challenged him in ways no one ever had. As the cameras rolled and the world watched, something strange started to happen. The man who had everything began to question what he really wanted, and the woman who had nothing. She might be the only one who could bring him back to life. But just when things started to feel real, *1*, unexpected truth changed everything, and it might destroy both of them before they ever get the chance to start over. His name was Julian Cross, a name that echoed across newsrooms, streaming platforms, and red carpets. The youngest media tycoon in the country, with a jaw-dropping net worth and a cold, calculated reputation. He didn't believe in love, didn't trust anyone, and never let his guard down. To him, people were either business assets or liabilities. But now, forced into this bizarre condition by his late father's will, Julian was about to face something no money or influence could control. *human connection*. The woman he chose, her name was Eva. She didn't tell him that at first. She barely spoke when he approached her with the proposal. Her eyes said she didn't believe him. Who would? A billionaire offering marriage to a stranger on the street sounded more like a cruel prank than a real offer. But desperation has its own language. And Eva, who had spent years drifting from shelter to shelter, finally said yes. Julian arranged everything: a fake backstory, a quick ceremony, a contract with strict terms, no media interviews, no touching, no emotions, just play the part until the inheritance was secured. But even with all his planning, he couldn't script what came next. Living under one roof exposed more than he expected. Eva wasn't broken like he thought. She was guarded, sure, but strong. And smart. She noticed things no one else did. She asked questions that made him uncomfortable. She didn't pretend to admire him like everyone else, and that annoyed Julian until it started to intrigue him. Meanwhile, whispers started spreading. Board members suspected the marriage wasn't real. Journalists began digging into Evas past, and behind it all, someone close to Julian seemed determined to sabotage everything. Just as he thought he was in control, the cracks started to show, and they were only getting deeper. Julian tried to stay focused on the endgame, secure the inheritance, take back control of his company, and move on. But Eva wasn't fitting neatly into the plan. She kept to herself most of the time, but when she did speak, her words cut through the silence like glass. She wasn't impressed by the luxury mansion, the designer clothes, or the drivers waiting outside. She was more interested in why Julian looked so alone in the middle of all that wealth. That question stayed with him longer than he expected. Meanwhile, things were falling apart behind the scenes. The board was restless. Julian's cousin, Victor, a slick executive with a hidden agenda, had started making moves. He was charming in public, ruthless in private, and he'd always hated playing second to Julian. Now, with doubts spreading about the legitimacy of the marriage, Victor saw a chance to take everything. All he had to do was prove the relationship was fake, and he was already gathering evidence. Evas Past was also starting to catch up. A photo surfaced online, blurry, taken years ago, showing her arguing with a man outside a shelter. No one knew who he was, but tabloids were already spinning stories. Julian told her to lay low, stay off social media, and let his team handle it. But Eva wasn't someone who liked being hidden. She had secrets of her own, and the more Julian tried to protect her, the more she pulled away. Then came the anonymous message. It wasn't signed, but it knew too much about Julian's deal, about Eva's past, and about what really happened the night his father died. Someone was watching them both, and they weren't going to let this marriage play out the way Julian planned. Julian's perfect plan was falling apart, piece by piece. His team couldn't trace the anonymous message, and every attempt to control the story just made things worse. Rumors about the fake marriage was spreading like wildfire. Social media was filled with clips of Eva looking uncomfortable next to Julian, and online relationship experts were tearing them apart. Every move they made was under a microscope. Inside the mansion, the tension was unbearable. Julian and Eva barely spoke. She had started staying out late, walking alone for hours, refusing security. He tried to act like it didn't bother him, but it did. He was starting to care in a way he never expected. But every time he tried to reach out, she pulled further away. It was like she was hiding something, not just from the world, but from him too. Then, during a high-stakes board meeting, Victor made his move. He revealed surveillance photos of Eva meeting a man late at night, the same man from the blurry photo that had gone viral. Victor claimed she was working with him to scam Julian out of the inheritance. The room erupted in whispers and doubt. Julian tried to defend her, but even he didn't have the answers. He hadn't asked. He hadn't really wanted to know. When Julian confronted Eva, she didn't deny it. She simply looked at him with a sadness he couldn't explain and said, "I didn't ask for any of this." And then she was gone, disappeared without a word, leaving behind nothing but a folded note with just one line. "You should ask your father why he chose me." That was the moment Julian realized he knew almost nothing about the woman he married, and everything about his own life might have been a lie. Julian read the note over and over, trying to make sense of it. "You should ask your father why he chose me." But his father was dead. There were no more questions to ask, at least, that's what he thought. Desperate for answers, Julian returned to his father's study, a room he hadn't touched since the funeral. Behind the rows of old books and dusty trophies, he found something strange, a locked drawer, one his father had always kept shut. Inside, he discovered a stack of letters, all addressed to Eva. They dated back over a decade. His father had been writing to her long before the will, long before the marriage clause. Some were filled with concern, others with regret. The words revealed a history Julian never imagined. His father had known Eva when she was just a teenager in a youth outreach program funded by his media company. She had once been brilliant, ambitious, and full of potential, until something happened that forced her onto the streets, and his father had been trying to help her ever since, quietly, from a distance. But one line in the final letter made Julian freeze. "If anything happens to me, I trust you'll protect what we built, because I couldn't protect you then." Suddenly, everything shifted. This wasn't just about a will or a business. His father hadn't chosen Eva as some random twist. He had trusted her, maybe more than he ever trusted Julian. Julian realized now that Eva hadn't run away. She was trying to protect someone and as he stared at the last letter, a second anonymous message arrived on his phone. "She knows the truth about your father's death. That's why she left, and that's why she's in danger." The clock was ticking. Julian raced through the city, heart pounding, following the only lead he had, a location ping from Eva's old phone, now reactivated in a part of town she never went near. It was an abandoned warehouse near the river, quiet, hidden. When he got there, he found her, surrounded by two men, one of them the same face from the photo Victor had shown. But it wasn't what he expected. Eva wasn't being threatened. She was confronting them. Julian stepped out from the shadows just as one of the men lunged at her. Without thinking, he tackled him to the ground. The struggle was brief, and soon the truth came spilling out. The man was a former employee of Julian's father, someone involved in a scandal the media empire had buried years ago. He'd been blackmailing Eva, threatening to reveal her past, and now, with the inheritance on the line, he wanted to take everything from both of them. Eva finally told Julian the full truth. Years ago, his father had tried to expose the man's crimes, but the fallout would have ruined the company. Eva, then just a teenager involved in the outreach program, was framed to take the blame. His father had quietly paid her way out of trouble, but guilt never left him. The marriage clause was his final attempt to make things right, to bring her back into a life she deserved. Julian was silent, shaken. Everything he believed about his father, about Eva, about himself, was wrong. But as the police took the blackmailer away, Eva turned to Julian and said, "I didn't marry you for money. I stayed because I saw something in you your father wanted to believe in." And just as Julian thought it was finally over, his phone buzzed again. A final message. Victor was never working alone. Julian stared at the message on his phone, feeling a mix of exhaustion and clarity. The chaos, the lies, the questions, it all finally made sense. Victor wasn't acting alone. He had been fed information, pushed to sabotage the marriage, guided from the shadows. But now Julian knew who had the most to gain. A senior board member, someone his father had once trusted but quietly demoted years ago. The man had waited patiently, playing both sides, hoping to destroy Julian's credibility and take over once the dust settled. But the truth had surfaced, and this time Julian wasn't backing down. Within days, Julian publicly cleared Eva's name. He revealed the cover-up from years ago, exposing the real villain behind the scandal and stepping down from his role as CEO temporarily to investigate deeper corruption within the company. The media spun it in every direction, but the truth was stronger than the noise. For once, Julian didn't care about the headlines. What mattered was what he saw in Eva, and what she'd shown him about himself. Eva didn't return to the mansion. Instead, she moved into a small apartment across town and started volunteering again at the same outreach center where she first met Julian's father. She wanted a life built on her own terms. Julian visited her one afternoon quietly, no cameras, no pressure, just him and her. They sat on the steps, watching kids play in the street. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but I know it's real." Eva smiled. "Let's figure it out without the contracts this time." Their story hadn't started with love. It started with a deal. But somewhere between the lies, the headlines, and the chaos, they'd found something honest. And for the first time in a long time, both of them were free.